SITREP World Briefing for May 10, 2026. Israeli forces carried out repeated strikes across Lebanon on Saturday, killing at least 39 people after a ceasefire announced about 3 weeks ago. Hezbollah responded with drone attacks on northern Israel. The exchange marked one of the deadliest days since the truce was declared. The fighting involved specific military action by both Israel and Hezbollah, with Israeli strikes hitting Lebanese territory repeatedly and Hezbollah launching drones across the border. Southern Lebanon has remained the main arena for these confrontations. The latest escalation shows how fragile the current arrangement is after last month's ceasefire was meant to halt a broader war risk along Israel's northern border and inside Lebanon. For Lebanon's government, each strike deepens pressure on a state already weakened by economic collapse and political paralysis. For Israel, every Hezbollah drone or rocket attack reinforces its argument that military operations must continue until border areas are secured. Russia and Ukraine accused each other of violating a 3-day U.S.-brokered ceasefire timed to coincide with Russia's Victory Day commemorations, with both sides saying attacks continued after the truce formally took effect. For Ukraine, the timing of the truce carried heavy symbolism because Ukrainians were also marking the end of World War II while living through a full-scale Russian invasion that has devastated cities from Mariupol to Bakhmut and kept frontline regions such as Zaporizhzhia under constant threat. The exchange of accusations matters because temporary truces in this war have repeatedly been used for political messaging as much as for military de-escalation. And neither Kyiv nor Moscow wants to appear responsible for breaking an arrangement backed by Washington. Russia held a reduced Victory Day military parade in Moscow under tight security, with President Vladimir Putin using the Red Square ceremony to project confidence that Russia would prevail in Ukraine and that the war was moving toward an end. The annual commemoration of the Soviet defeat of Nazi Germany is one of the Kremlin's most important political rituals, but this year's event was visibly more restrained, reflecting the pressure the Ukraine war has placed on Russia's security posture and public staging of military power. The most striking difference in Moscow was the absence of the extensive military hardware that the Kremlin normally showcases to signal battlefield strength and national confidence. Reports described a city on alert and a ceremony whose atmosphere felt closer to wartime than to a triumphal display, suggesting that Russian authorities were balancing the symbolic need to preserve Victory Day with concerns about possible security threats, and with the practical reality that equipment and attention are tied up by more than 2 years of war in Ukraine. Putin coupled the ceremony with accusations that Western countries are arming Ukraine, folding the current conflict into the Kremlin's long-running attempt to link its invasion to the memory of World War II. The scaled-back parade also conveyed the costs of the campaign: tighter security, fewer visible symbols of military grandeur, and a capital city marking its most important patriotic holiday under the shadow of drone threats and a war that has transformed domestic life as well as foreign policy. Hungary's parliament formally elected Peter Magyar prime minister in Budapest on May 9th, completing a transfer of power that ends Viktor Orban's 16-year tenure at the top of Hungarian politics. Magyar, described as a pro-European Union conservative, was sworn in after lawmakers voted him into office. The handover matters well beyond Budapest because Hungary has been one of the EU's most disruptive members on rule of law, migration, and Ukraine policy under Orban. France 24 and RFI both describe the transition as the close of an era shaped by Orban's confrontations with EU institutions. For European capitals, the significance lies not only in a new prime minister, but in the possibility that Budapest could move from being a spoiler inside the bloc to a more cooperative actor on budget disputes, democratic standards, and common foreign policy decisions. Magyar now takes office with expectations that he will recalibrate Hungary's posture toward the European Union while still governing from the conservative side of politics. That balance will be closely watched in Brussels and in neighboring capitals because Orban's governments turned Hungary into a test case for how far an EU member state could challenge the bloc from within. Magyar inherits not only the Prime Minister's office in Budapest, but also decisions on Hungary's economic alignment, access to EU funds, and its role in major European debates over security and democratic governance. Keir Starmer said he would remain Prime Minister after Labour suffered heavy losses in local elections across the United Kingdom, a result that sharpened pressure on his leadership less than a year after taking office nationally. The setbacks were recorded across England and were accompanied by poor performances in Wales and Scotland, while Reform UK benefited from disillusioned voters looking for a sharper anti-establishment message. The local election outcome highlighted a widening political problem for Labour. Voters who expected faster improvement after the party's return to power instead used municipal and regional contests to register frustration. France 24 reported that analysts tied the losses to disappointment over change, and the same coverage showed Reform UK continuing to gain ground as a national challenger on the right. In Britain's political system, local elections rarely decide a government's survival on their own, but they do serve as an important signal of party organization, activist morale, and whether a governing party is building or losing credibility between general elections. For Starmer, the immediate task is political rather than procedural, persuading Labour supporters in England, Wales, and Scotland that his government is still capable of delivering visible results before the next national vote. A prime minister who campaigned on competence and renewal now faces demands from within his broader coalition to show progress in ways that can be felt locally. By vowing to stay on after the losses, Starmer signaled that he intends to absorb the setback, but the election results have given opponents a stronger argument that Labour must respond more quickly to public impatience. Spanish authorities began evacuating and disembarking passengers from the MV Hondias on Sunday, after the cruise ship anchored off Tenerife in the Canary Islands following a hantavirus outbreak that killed 3 passengers. Spanish nationals were the first to come ashore, with other national groups expected to follow under a phased operation organized after the vessel reached Tenerife early in the day. Health officials have stated that not everyone on board is infected, but the ship has become the focus of an international public health response because several cases were detected during the voyage, and the deaths prompted urgent action to isolate and move travelers safely. Spain's health ministry said the evacuation effort would continue in stages, with the last evacuation flight from the Canary Islands due to leave on Monday as authorities separate passengers by nationality and arrange onward travel. The operation matters beyond Tenerife because hantavirus infections are rare but can be severe, and disembarkation from an isolated vessel requires coordination between port officials, medical teams, international contact tracing systems. The Hondias case has already drawn cross-border attention after earlier passenger movements triggered monitoring efforts, and Spain is now handling the highest-profile phase of the response by taking people off the ship, screening them, and trying to prevent any further spread linked to the voyage. Sources are available at sitrepbrief.com.